Okay, you can't look at don't look at my list. We're going to play a word association game.
Oh, okay.
So this is low pressure. You can't mess this up.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
You'd be surprised.
I have faith in your abilities, even if you don't. So here's the deal. I'm going to tell you a word.
Okay.
You just say the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong. It's just it's just a thought exercise.
Okay. This is going to be hard for me.
Because you don't have thoughts? Or
No, because multiple things come to my mind at once.
Oh, okay. Well,
but anyway,
you have to pick one.
Okay.
But like rapid fire.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
I tried to make these pretty easy. I don't know. They could go awry.
Okay.
Sports.
Razorbacks.
Oh, nice. Okay. Music.
Collective Soul. I don't know.
Is that a band? I'm really sorry. Sorry to let you down, boss.
I don't know why that was the first band that came to mind. Anyway,
That was right.
onward.
Game.
Basketball.
Okay. That one I've kind of figured.
Okay.
Beach.
Orange. Orange Beach was the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why.
Oh, like the place.
Like the place.
Okay.
And then
I thought you meant like the color.
Quickly followed by the next, the next one was Ken.
Like from Barbie.
Who beaches. Yeah, that's what I do.
That's his job, is just beach.
I beach, yeah. Who my daughter calls Kent, and it's hilarious. Kent.
That's amazing.
Good job, Miley.
Maybe if you have a boy, you should name him Kent.
Kent.
Just because Miley can say it.
Kent Kimbrough.
Kent Kimbrough. Honestly, it's not the worst.
Okay. Put that in the name bucket.
Ready?
Yep.
Summer.
Olaf.
These are so much better than I thought they would be. Heart.
Love.
Oh, love.
Yeah.
No, the next word is love.
Oh.
So you cheated a little bit.
See, this is one that one's hard because it's all I've been thinking about.
I know.
So I went to like a million things.
Sure.
But I guess chocolate.
Nice.
I don't know why.
You know
what
what? You
rose to the top.
surprised me across the board.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, except for heart. That was kind of predictable.
Yeah, that was.
I did not see Olaf coming. I really didn't.
Just because when you say summer, I think of Olaf saying summer.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right.
That was fun.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think yesterday's sermon maybe was a little bit of a surprise for some people. Not like the scripture, like you had warned us. You did warn us. Because some of it was really challenging, I think.
Yeah.
Murderers.
Yeah, murderers.
We could talk about that. But I think in general, I think it's always sort of a surprise to talk about love in a way that is maybe not the way that we think about it normally. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit more about love and 1 John.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. I'm Becca. I'm the pastor of family ministries here at Katie First.
And I'm Mark. I'm the senior pastor here at Katie First.
Welcome to the Katie First Family Podcast, where we offer ideas, inspiration, and encouragement to help you and your family grow as joyful disciples of Jesus Christ. All right, let's talk about it. Love.
Yeah. So this was I was looking forward to. There's a lot that I'm looking forward to in this, but this is a good one where John, last week we had this question: what does love require of you?
Yes.
And then I feel like John kind of gives us his answer to.
Yeah.
It requires this, that you lay down your life for one another, just as Christ has done for you.
Yeah.
And I talked about, obviously when we hear Christ laying down his life, we most often think about the cross, which is obviously part of that. But I think John wanted something much more normal every day.
Yeah.
And then he continues to say, if you have the world's goods, and doing that in air quotations, and see someone in need and don't help them, there's no love there.
Yeah.
And I was surprised this week to find how that, I was like, well, what is the world's goods? What does that mean? And it was this Greek word bios, which is where we get biology, but it just means like your livelihood. Mm-hmm. and kind of then began to sort of pick at that and go, oh, well, that's really like, not like just your excess wealth. That's like we all have a bios. We all have our livelihood. And whether we have a lot or little, we have a livelihood. And that could be sort of summed up in your possessions, sure, but your power, how much you do or don't have, your privilege, how much you do or don't have, because we all have something. That's how we just get along in life. And that's what Jesus did, is he consistently sort of laid down that to lift up someone else. And that's what John was saying, like, you see someone need, you're not willing to lay down yourself to lift someone up in big, grand ways or just really small ways, and makes this love something that, as he says, John, not just a word or an idea, but an action, a way in which we live.
Yeah.
Put real practice to us. So this is a fun part of the letter. There was still a lot of challenging stuff in it. And we sort of jumped over a bit of really challenging stuff in chapter 2, which we don't need to go back to right now. But the bits about murderers and Cain and all that sort of stuff. That's kind of weird, but the Bible's just weird sometimes too. You can just say that. So
I love it.
Yeah.
We can just say it.
We
The
can just
Bible's
say it. The
sort of
Bible
weird
is
sometimes.
weird sometimes.
Well, and people, I think I've said this before on here, but I'm going to say it again. I had a professor in seminary who was like, we tend to think that we can put ourselves in the place of the people in the Bible or the people writing the Bible, because everybody's people, everybody's just folks, right? And everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. But people in the ancient world did not wear pants. There's just a totally different mentality.
Yeah.
And trying to shove some of that into a 21st century framework, even just linguistically, is just not super workable.
Yeah.
So it's okay, I think, to say that that's weird. I wasn't here, obviously, yesterday because I wasn't feeling well. Thank you so much for covering for me.
Hey, you
and
got it.
letting the kiddos know that I miss them because I did, and I love them because I do.
Yep.
And really good children's sermon, by the way.
Thanks.
Loved it. The one little girl was very excited to have the apple, which was precious. She's like waving it around. Loved it. Excuse me. But I think I watched it live yesterday, and then I re-listened to it again this morning so that we could have this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It's just different when you don't hear it in person. I felt like I needed to hear it twice. So one of the things that really immediately kind of jumped out to me both times was that this idea of anybody who has loved someone in any kind of capacity knows that real love is sacrificial, right? So my best friend Kristen, when I first met Steven, I confessed to her that I wasn't so sure that in my mind, as I had thought about what it would be like to have a husband, that I had actually envisioned a husband so much as a butler.
Okay.
Right? And I had to rework in my mind too many romance novels, it turns out. Right. This idea of somebody who was just constantly able to do for me as an act of love, as opposed to an understanding of what it meant to really partner together and to have to take care of each other. Right. And so I had to really adjust. I know I should not be confessing this. People are going to judge me. But I mean, I think also just our friendships, the way that we show up for one another on the regular, not in times of crisis alone, or in times of even just good stuff, right? Good, bad, not just the highs or the real lows, but our everyday, how we care for each other, how we intentionally build our friendships. Love does require some sacrifice, and some denial of yourself to a certain extent. And I think when we've talked about that in the past, I mean the church in general, we talk about denying yourself, and it feels like that can so quickly go to the extreme of just not caring for yourself at all and leaving no space for yourself. And so then you maybe sometimes, I think I'm guilty of this, overcorrect the other direction, right? So, my cup is all the way empty, so now I need to have all this time to refill it. So what I really appreciated about your walking us through this scripture on Sunday was the conversation of not denying ourselves, but recognizing the things that we have that are our livelihood. like you mentioned, like power and privilege, but also just like, I think that could extend to like skills, right? Or just like any kind of resource that we had.
Yeah.
And offering that up, not just sacrificially, because that feels, maybe for me at least, so maybe I'm projecting too much, but it feels like loaded to me a little bit, but like as a gift, right? It doesn't hurt me. I mean, maybe it could. And there have definitely been times where that has been the case, that love cost me something more than I intended for it to.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think this is the part of the gospel for me that is like where the rubber meets the road. Am I willing, honestly, knowing what love requires of me, to meet that? And sometimes the answer is no.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a resounding yes.
Yeah.
And it's okay to still be growing in that.
Yeah.
But that's what like kind of was going through my mind. I mean, I think it's really easy to reach for things, and this is a family podcast. So I think as parents, it's easy for us to see where loving our children is sacrificial.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm okay with the early wake ups. You know what I miss about pre-kids? I miss coming home at the end of the day and being done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you're done. So like if you just want to eat like a sandwich and go to bed, or just like binge watch, you can do that.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to wrestle a tiny person into a bath and into the bed.
Yeah.
And I do. I miss that. I miss the spontaneity of like, you know, pre-kids. But because you'll have to just do to love your kid well means some form of stability, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of structure, especially when they're little.
Yeah.
But like, man, I love that kid.
Yeah.
I wouldn't undo it.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think that's, love is so tricky because we talk about it in so many kinds of ways. And I use that same word to describe my relationship with ice cream. And like, it's just a complicated.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying reminds me of another New Testament writer who we all know, Paul, who in Philippians.
I've heard of him.
You've heard of him.
I've heard of Paul.
And Paul talks about in Philippians 2, the mindset that was in Christ being humility. And this is one of my favorite things when I'm doing premarital counseling. This is one of the pieces of scriptures that I say, you know, if your marriage means, if it's going to be Christian, if that word means anything, I think this is one of two places I would look to what that means. And that's this mindset of humility. And then we sort of walk through like where Paul says, look, not only to your own interest, but the interest of the other. And when I sort of like try to point out there is like, Paul doesn't say completely forget yourself and see the other. He rather says humility looks like you still have your own personhood. You still have your own. Yeah. And like, if there's just a natural tension in being able to not lose yourself and at the same time being aware of the other person who's with you and lifting them up. Yeah. And in fact, in any like good relationship, if we're both trying to be like, well, I'm not going to look to my interest, but your interest first, and you're doing that for the other person, like you can't both do that. So like at some point you're going to get your way, they're going to get their way. So like the reality is, just as with everything, it's way more messy than just like love is just this one thing. Because even as we, you know, laying down your life, your livelihood to lift up others, well, if you lose all of your livelihood, you have nothing to lay down anymore. So like there is a time when what love requires of you is to take care of yourself so that you have yourself. So it, you know, it's always way more complicated than plucking one verse. Even if I love this one verse, there's still so much more that
because I think that sometimes the desire to make things simple overrides some really beautiful stuff. Yeah. And I really appreciate the times that we as like pastors get to tell people it's okay for this to be theologically, practically messy, complicated, nuanced, that it's not wrong because it's not straightforward.
Right.
And because it's just reality.
Yeah. I mean, even take this one idea that John's saying. You should lay down your life for one another. Okay. So I do that for you, and then you do that for me, and then someone else does that. Like, we're constantly overlapping, and at some point you're the benefactor of someone lifting you up. At some point you both can't be doing. So, like, even just like a very practical way.
Yeah.
There's some level of this that implies sometimes you're receiving that which needs to lift you up.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're giving.
Yeah.
And both of those are true. It's because I agree. I do think the sort of self-denial aspect of our faith sometimes gets understood in a harmful way.
Yeah.
I remember used to thinking of that, even the idea of humility meant you can't think of yourself very highly, you know. And I think it's C.S. Lewis, who I hope I don't butcher this, but humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So it's not a devaluing of yourself. It's just a saying, I'm not at the center of the world. I'm going to think of other people. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's so helpful. To be humble doesn't mean I have to be like degrade myself. Yeah. And I think that's love. I think these things are tied together.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I think so much of what John is saying, Paul says the same thing through humility. But and you know, I'm thinking about, and I have this conversation. That's for Miley. That's one of the things that. How do we do this as parents or people who are working in the life of a child? How to instill in them that both and of who you are is so valuable and good, and it's good for you to be someone who gives yourself away, who cares for others, and that. What do we say this all the time? That's the long game. Like that just takes a long time for all of us to get. But I want Miley to be humble and loving, and that doesn't mean she disregards herself and lays down her life because she's nothing. It's in fact the opposite. She knows her worth and value and dignity and wants to give that into the world. Yeah. And how can I help her have that both and posture, that she loves herself and but also has such a love for other people. Yeah. And
that makes sense. I don't want to like give away too much of next week's, but I know, because I'm excited to preach, but I like the little
There was a dance.
You didn't see it, but I did.
I'm looking to camera.
It's so good. But like, I think it's so much easier to be loving when you know you are loved. And I think we really wrestle with that. And that's all I'm going to say right now, because I do actually want people to potentially listen to the sermon on Sunday. Yeah. But I think for us right now, this continuous building, right? So what does love require of us? Individually, in our families, in our homes, in our communities, as a church. And then to tag onto that, and what will it cost us? What will it not just what does it require of me, like what's my next step? Yeah. But what will the consequences of that be? And I think that being honest about that isn't a deterrent, because consequences has like such a negative connotation. But it can go either way. Yeah. I mean, you know, a consequence of, you know, eating a healthy meal is that you feel better, right? And maybe a negative consequence is that you miss chocolate. I don't know. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think everything is just cause and effect, right? So there will be an effect. There will be something that happens when we choose to do what love requires of us. Yeah. And I think having those conversations really intentionally with ourselves, if that's what we need to do in our families and as a church, I think is really important for us to continue to grow. Yeah. So I'm only excited. I really enjoyed. I was disappointed to not be able to be here in person yesterday, but so grateful that I could still actively participate online and, you know, be a part of what we're learning together. Yeah. So hopefully we'll continue to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you have found some inspiration and encouragement for yourself and for your family. If you'd like to get our weekly podcast delivered directly to you, you can go and subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We're so fancy. For more information about Katie First and upcoming events like VBS,
come on,
you need to get registered. We are more people every day.
Things are happening.
We're at 70 kiddos now. So let's get some volunteers. Let's get going.
Yeah.
We've got a meeting this Sunday right after church in the
volunteers. We need you.
We need you. Please, for my sanity. So if you want more information about all of the summer activities, you can go to katiefirst.org. Most importantly, we want you to know that in the middle of your ordinary, messy life, whatever that looks like for you and your family right now, that you are loved, you are not alone, and you are doing a good job.
Yeah, and we got a big Sunday coming up. Not only is Becca preaching, which is going to be great.
Thank you.
But also we have a lot of our kids' choirs singing, our bells. It's kind of a big musical Sunday. So we would love to see you on this Sunday. And until then, have a great week.